Bit of a different video for you today, something of an experiment, not about cars. So here we go. It orbits a fairly important social issue though, because someone who I won't name has just accused me of being an extremist. And even worse, I can see where they're coming from. I never expected to be an extremist, but here we are. Might as well deal with it, because I'm pretty sure I know exactly how I got here. Let this video, therefore, be a stark reminder to you and your children about the perils of living in 2024. A public service announcement of sorts. Do not let this happen to you. Might as well start at the beginning. It really hasn't helped that I have been the same gender for my entire life. You know, the one I was born with. Problematically, this has never seemed like a real issue for me. I'd rather be able to choose, I don't know, my age and or my height, because if I could, dude, I would be 45 and 6'4" forever. Extremists like me, we don't happen to think that special interest groups deserve to be more equal than us. We're getting kind of sick of that. And this viewpoint, it's a real no-no these days. It so is. Not to mention a total red flag that someone you love might be on the cusp of what I would now call domestic radicalisation. Although our recent referendum does suggest that there might be a great many more dangerous extremists out there than I would have at first glance supposed. Something should be done, perhaps. The thing that really tipped me over the edge and made me a proper extremist, however, was respect for the facts. If you want to fit in, you've just got to let that go. The facts have no place in 2024. I've tried, of course, but I really can't let go of the somewhat outdated notion that Newton, Bernoulli, Galileo, Pascal, etc. are still relevant today. Such a long list of luminaries, obviously, but who has time? The other extremists I know and associate with, in some circles known as wokeophobes, we all seem to hold the somewhat deluded view that our species might still benefit from the distillation of the sum total of scientific knowledge throughout the world. We used to call that education. In other words, learning how stuff actually works. This is a very dangerous idea, that we should respect the way the world actually works. I'm almost ashamed to be saying it out loud. Almost. This is compounded, of course, by another dangerously radical thought process, critical thinking. It's a very hard thing to swallow, right? This increasingly woke tsunami of bullshit. If you get infected by critical thinking, it's just not possible. I still remember when critical thinking infected me. I was like 5 years old and I didn't have a care in the world. I was skipping down the road in the nearby wet market, wearing my favourite beard and dress, oddly confused about the chuppa chup I was sucking at the time. And I just started projectile vomiting bullshit. It was Linda Blair, only with bullshit. I was rushed to hospital, of course, but it was too late. Doctors told Mommy and Daddy that I had contracted the latest strain of Crit-19, as it was known way back then. And sadly, there was no cure. They were distraught, of course, like to say the least. It's even more dangerous now, right? In 2024, if you hold the entrenched view, which might be at loggerheads with that of the woke, because, you know, they're wrong and the facts support you, this just makes you a hater, dude. You might as well be wearing a frickin' conical pillowcase on your head. Doubtless, we'll be able to legislate hate out of existence soon. I know they're working on it, but until then, it's going to be a real problem. Before I became an extremist, I never understood that I harboured quite so much hate. In good faith, I believed the facts and perhaps even debating them aggressively but respectfully would keep things on track and perhaps even move inexorably forwards on a societal level. But I now understand that holding on to the facts is one sure way to end up kind of here, a hater, extremist. Just to take a simple example here, I did not learn until just a few years ago that the British invaded Australia on the 26th of January 1788. I always thought it was just colonisation. Just propaganda, I suppose. And if not by the Brits, then doubtless this invasion would have been at the hands of the far more benevolent French, Spanish, Russians, or perhaps even the Chinese. The history of humanity is, of course, rife with stories of triumphant territorial winners, unfortunate losers, and only occasional compromise. And yet, extremists like me hold on to the hardcore fundamentalist view that we are not motivated to apologise for the conduct of people 236 years ago, which was lawful at the time, and let us not forget exactly how the world worked back then. This is disgraceful when you say this stuff out loud, as opposed to, sotto voce at clandestine extremist meetings. At a recent such meeting, it was suggested to me by someone you know, but whom I will not name, that rather than obsess about the past and just manoeuvre for advantage today, would it not be better for us all to strive to do all we can in good faith to help disadvantaged people unilaterally, and just then all strive to get along and make the joint a better place? It goes without saying that I told this person to keep their damn voice down because the walls, ears, join the dots, dude. On the 26th of January, we extremists would rather just have the day off and, through the prism of alcohol perhaps, embrace the unpalatable notion that we're all in it together and it's not actually that bad living in a country that's not, a bit more like North Korea. Do not let this happen to you, dude. It is a living hell. Even in my extremely radicalised state today, I know I should be marching in the street at least weekly with a bone through my nose, proudly beneath a banner that screams, "Just stop oil." But I am ashamed to believe that if we actually did that, it would take about 3 weeks to go back to the Stone Age, at least functionally. At a sinister gathering of like-minded extremists recently, in which this issue came up, one of my co-conspirators, who is even more radicalised than me, if such a thing is possible, suggested that if we did just stop oil, it would not actually take 3 weeks for the supermarket shelves to empty, for the hospitals to cease functioning, and for social order to collapse more or less completely. We've all seen how quickly the one product most tightly coupled with human flourishing in the modern world, i.e. toilet tissue, disappears, haven't we? Toilet tissue is modern life's double-ply canary in the dystopia coal mine. Of this there is no doubt. There 1 minute and just the next. Just stop oil. Just stop pooping, dude. They're one and the same thing. This same extremist chap then had the outspoken freaking temerity to suggest that longer term, just stopping oil would lead to the collapse of industry, agriculture, the entire food production infrastructure across the planet, and the subsequent starvation of billions worldwide. Even more provocatively, he suggested, brace yourself, that this would also probably cause the rapid downfall of radical feminism. So, not all bad. Dangerous ideas, though, I think you'd agree, as opposed to the, let's call it, correct viewpoint that turning off the oil tap would lead to humans suddenly living once again in perfect harmony with nature, just like in the olden days. The olden days, you know, back when life expectancy was roughly 30 and 3/4 of your 12 kids didn't actually make it to adulthood because they died of a freaking tooth infection or dysentery, or because those bastards over the ridge rode over one day and they had longer or more pointy freaking sticks than you. None of us have been able to figure out why they never had radical feminism back then. Go figure.
And the future in many ways can be here right now, be very clear, is solar panels on the roof charging your vehicle for free overnight. That's what it looks like.
Go, Albo, go. I know I should be chanting enthusiastically from the sidelines. Bring it, dude. Why stop at solar panels? Let's have lunar panels too. Let us all rise up euphorically and be put in our place by those who know better than us. Photovoltaic Albo and blackout Bowen, the yin and yang of the proposition of the future. We'll get down on our knees, all of us, and play that net zero flute. You know you want to. If you turn into an extremist like me, and nobody deserves it, dude, nobody, especially not you, you might be moved to say, yeah, the climate is changing and humans are certainly having an impact, a major one, but the only viable course of action at this point is to stop masturbating about it from Glasgow to Dubai and strive instead for better efficiency, learn to adapt, and get the best brains in the business actively engaged on real solutions and throw money at them. But they have to be real solutions, as opposed to just letting the political masturbator class just have at it. It's heresy, I know, because unicorn farts and green gold at the end of the rainbow are doubtless there to be discovered any day now, just around the corner. In fact, you can probably get there in a Model 3 today, if it doesn't catch fire. Underwater. Safe and effective, dude. There's probably a budding young brainy extremist out there today who, if nudged in the right radical direction by sinister senior influencers, could learn to use AI to crank photosynthesis, you know, the process that plants do, and crank it by 10x or even 100x, and suck CO2 out of the air, yielding piles of raw cellulose that you could see from space, and turn into whatever the hell you want. Synthetic fuel, building materials, weapons, record-breaking breast implants. Like, all good, dude. The world's your oyster. But now that I think about it more properly, that would sadly torpedo those just stop oil twerps. And of course, nobody in their right mind wants to stop them doing their fine work, improving the world and solving society's problems, surely. This is the kind of thing we extremists talk about at the meetings. I know I should be pissed off about all of the coal and liquid natural gas that we export here in Shitsville. Deplorably, we are the world's #1 exporter of both of these evil substances, sending ship after ship without end out there into the world with the sole objective of destroying the planet for a profit, throwing Greta and others under the bus. Of course, if you become an extremist, and I sincerely hope you don't, you would doubtless tell those who seem susceptible that these vital substances, coal, gas, they're essential for making steel, cement, fertiliser, which the Bible in extremist hell clearly mischaracterises as, quote, the foundations of modern civilization. At meetings, we actually tell the young extremists that together with oil, coal and gas lift people in India and China, for example, out of poverty. Such heresy. The extremist doctrine states pretty clearly that hydrocarbons increase human lifespan. They reduce the amount of land required to produce the food for 8 billion people, thus minimising land clearing. They provide the building blocks for all of the infrastructure and consumer goods which we take for granted here in the developed world. According to the extremist 10 Commandments, this is a historical fact, but of course, that's just propaganda. I know I should worship, revere, and otherwise idolise Space Karen and not blaspheme further by referring to him in this way ever again. The base on Mars is coming any day now, together with full autonomy, and both the Tesla Semi and the Cyber Urinal really are in full swing production-wise. They can't keep up with demand, obviously. Is there really any doubt? Instead, however, at Extremist University, we are all taught that you can't save the planet with a giant armada of 3-ton vehicles, no matter what the powertrain. Partly because that would be an insult to the concept of engineering efficiency, and partly because cars are only 10% of the emissions problem. These are very dangerous ideas, and they should be stamped out altogether, right? And you did not hear them from me, okay? If you're a parent, I urge you to expose your children to bullshit early. Build up their tolerance and increase the dosage incrementally. It's all written down on the packet, dude. And there are plenty of different flavours. There's no excuse for not getting this job done. Feed them press releases from politicians and statements from major multinational corporations. Like, don't scrimp, make it the good stuff. Do not neglect this vital aspect of their intellectual development. Have to get those bullshit acceptance neurotransmitters really firing at a young age. This is the only thing separating your child and raw extremism. Capacity to swallow bullshit is everything if you want to fit in 2024. And keep them well away from STEM, dude. Whatever you do, nothing good ever came from STEM. Like, look me in the eye, dude. You tell me, what has science ever done for you? That's right. STEM is what brought me undone, almost certainly. STEM sliced off my bullshit reception gene and thus turned me into this withered, radicalised husk of my former self, which you see before you now, fessing up. It goes without saying that you should also do regular family visits to the National Monument to the Death of Integrity in Public Life. Visit the prayer room. But don't spend too much time thinking about what might have happened there once or twice. I mean, who keeps count? One initial dose of the monument before the age of 5 is the official recommendation from Pfizer, with boosters every 6 months until, 25 or 30. That should do it. Extremist proofing a young person really isn't that hard. You just have to be consistent, dude. That's all it takes. There are very few guarantees in life, but I guarantee that if you feed the sprogs press releases and you expose them to that place as prescribed, they'll be all grown up before you know it, charging their EVs overnight and splashing on Peter Dutton's signature aftershave, Chanel Sweet Embrace of Death. and thanking almighty Space Karen that they had the good sense to listen to their parents, as opposed to some extremist like me.